Birdman time for Birdman on the Mountain and the Community Shout. Hello to everybody out there on Sholo TV, also on the White Mountain Independent TV, and those of you that are just watching on Facebook, YouTube, or wherever else. And if you're listening, hey, thanks for listening in. You might notice just a little bit of a difference today. The mics are gone. So, and I got some guests in here. I've got Cal and Kate. How are you guys?
Good. Thanks for having us.
So we're just chilling, hanging out, listening to the cars drive down the White Mountain Road behind us and having fun. You guys are with an organization. Now, let's start. Bigger picture is RAIN, right?
Right. So RAIN is the Rural Activation and Innovation Network.
Okay.
So, interestingly enough, I was teaching in Concho for a while.
Okay.
And realized that my kids were awesome. You know, my students were great, very literate. They had everything going for them except for resources.
Okay.
And so that was kind of the base of writing a grant with a friend of mine at ASU. And it took us a few years. It's like the persistence pays piece. It took us 5 years. But we actually got it funded with the National Science Foundation.
Okay, so talk to me about resources. When you say resources, I mean, it could be a lot of different things. Specifically, can you give me an idea of what they were missing?
Yeah, so a part of what they were missing was just the realization of what's available locally. So what are the assets that we actually have? How can we use them better? And how can we get people to really understand what's going on in the White Mountains? So because I live here, I wrote myself into the grants.
Well, there you go.
And so, and our region, right? And so we did several things. You know, we gathered a group together of folks from K-12 and the community college, from First Things First, medical, the chambers of commerce, kind of lots of different people that wouldn't normally sit at a table. And then we did an asset map.
Oh, okay.
And so let's look around and see what we really have. Partially because what we want to do is we want to bring up the idea that we're not asset poor. We just have to be aware and maybe work differently.
And not so much, or not only programs or things, but there's a lot of people that do a lot of really cool, interesting things as hobbies or as professions. We have welders, we have people with forges, we have people that are gunsmiths, we have people that do a lot of crafting, a lot of farming, a lot of really science-rich hobbies and professions every day that don't think of themselves as resources or necessarily something or with someone with a knowledge set that could benefit other folks in the region. And that's really the network we're looking to connect.
So we talk about innovation. These are the kind of things that, you know, you got to engage the frontal lobes of the brain kind of to do with. They're not just to go out and grunt.
That's right.
And it's funny because if you talk about welders and you mention a welder to somebody or you mention some of that kind of work, they're like, oh, well, that's just, you know, drone, not. But
except, no, it's big. It's physics. It's chemistry. Yep. It's metallurgy. I mean, it's most of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis involves asking how and why and what, solving problems, thinking clearly, trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B. That's all science. Mm-hmm. The tools we use is all technology. Mm-hmm. Figuring out how to fix something is all engineering. Right? And then I know people hate to hear this, but math is like the underlying part of all of that.
Everything we do.
Math isn't important.
Right.
Stop. No.
Everything
it's really not scary. Really, it's not.
It's not scary.
Okay.
It's really not.
But so part of that is just bringing up the realization that we are doing this. But the U.S. really, we are a country of innovators, right? Okay. We started from, pushing plows 400 years ago to creating airplanes and rockets. I mean, and even in the last 100 years, we went from carriages pulled by horses to having shuttles back and forth to space.
Right.
I mean, that's a big deal. A lot of people don't realize that didn't only come from universities and the folks that sit in the ivory towers. It comes from in people's garages.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it comes from garages, doesn't it?
A lot of it comes in garages, yeah. And we really want to help reawaken that, because kind of seems to have kind of settled down a little bit. And it can bring workforce development to our area. It can bring jobs and opportunities. You know, people just have to think differently.
It's funny because this all started. The what I did was a podcast from the garage.
Right.
So, and that was just because, you know, it's easier just to start working where you're at and move from there and be able to do it when you can do it. And then it evolved and evolved. So these day and ages, you know, we've got things going on, and people like think that they're all connected, and they've got more access. And I wouldn't say resources. I'd say they have more access to information than they've ever had before. Unfortunately, they've got access to all kinds of information, don't they? Good information, bad information. Some people might say fake news. And I get asked all the time, well, how do you know, like, what to believe? And that goes back to science,
it does.
the arts, and things like that,
Right.
and being able to think critically, right?
Right.
So, you know, and that all buys into this, doesn't it?
It does. And then I've been fortunate over the last year or so to be in several global conferences. And one of the themes that keeps coming out over and over and over again, it's like a kind of a mantra, is critical thinking and analytical thinking. So a lot of the folks that come out of universities are very, very bright and have a good grasp on their academics. But sometimes solving problems is difficult.
Right.
And then we see, and that's a relatively small part of the population. Everybody else, if you look at who needs to solve problems on a day-to-day basis, I want a mechanic that can figure that what's wrong with my car out fast,
Right.
and accurately.
Yeah.
Right? That's a critical thinking and analytical thinking skill that is underappreciated at one level and not seen as well at another.
Right.
And so, I don't know, there's that disconnect. But I think people sometimes don't feel that they have a worth because, you know, I'm just a mechanic. Well, I'm sorry, but that's a very valuable skill set.
Yeah.
And a way to think.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, it's
You know?
funny because we always used to joke about, because I've dealt with mechanics and dealt with installers and that in the mobile electronics industry. And then I got into the corporate world. And you get people to be like complain that, you got to provide me with a computer. And I used to laugh because mechanics, they got $65,000 to $80,000 worth of tools in their own toolbox, and they leave.
Right.
When they leave a hole in the place because they take all their stuff with them because it's actually their stuff.
Right.
Whereas in the corporate world, the guy disappears. It's like, where'd he go? Oh,
Right.
the stuff's still there. So, hey, we killed Groot. Okay. But so it's very interesting, and not to pick on the college world, but I think college is really good at teaching people how to research and go and find information. The thing it doesn't seem to drill down on is to vet out whether it's accurate or inaccurate.
Well, I mean, that's
happens.
part of it. Sometimes it is actually finding out, is that real or is that not? Failure in actually all of our worlds is one of the ways that we learn.
In life.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing.
No,
you know,
no.
we fail our way to success.
Right. Right. And one of the greatest innovations came about because they were failures. They were trying to create something else and ended up creating this really cool thing that now we use and depend on.
But we have amazing innovators up here. I mean, truly, folks that are doing some incredible things in their after-school classroom, like Mike Eilertson and Snowflake,
Doing incredible stuff.
who's just doing
It's amazing.
amazing things,
That's
right?
amazing.
And then Stephanie Ray with Workforce Development, who is just, she has a set of, goals and aspirations for workforce in the area that is really out of the box and has a potential for being incredibly successful.
Yeah. One of the terms that came up with Stephanie was incubator, and that's and we've talked about that too. Those that have watched with the Moonshot and NICET and things like that, incubator as well. And it's basically giving people I guess the soil in which to be planted into and
support.
then grow and support. Right. Yeah. So it's basically all that stuff that comes, but you gotta grow, so you gotta go and do it. It's not like it's just gonna be given to you.
Right.
So you're gonna be coming in monthly and talking about, and hopefully bringing in some of these people to talk about some of the things that are going on in the area, some of the initiatives, and then what's next. How does this get started? And then it's like any snowball rolling down a hill. It's going to get bigger, gather more steam, get going, and
right. And one of the, I'm going to plug my role with RAIN, but also with First Things First is this work of embedding STEM into everyday activities, into every age group across the region. Really, the opportunity we have in this region to do that is really based on the system level work that I've done and that Stephanie's done and others have done really over the last decade, but recognizing, just like you alluded to, using the frontal lobes of your brain and really thinking critically and being able to move out of fight or flight and knee-jerk decisions, knee-jerk reactions, regardless of the field. But that's really predicated on having opportunities to experiment and try and fail and learn from those opportunities to play. And that, because that's the foundation of playing as a big kid, is the foundation of being able to play as a little kid and play with those concepts. And so that's part of what is really exciting with this initiative with RAIN and the National Science Foundation, and intentionally building in outside the box partners to embed science, technology, engineering, and the dreaded math into everything we do every day, and really beginning to meaningfully reframe the cooking you do when you make breakfast in the morning, the chemistry you engage in when you do bubble bath with your kids, the chemistry and the horticulture and the engineering you do when you build raised beds because it's warmer than trying to garden in the ground. I mean, those are the real things that people do every day, and being able to connect all of those activities to these pie in the sky theories, I think, is part of the significant value that this brings in an ongoing way.
Yeah. And there's an academic aspect to this. This is anything that's funded by the National Science Foundation is a research grant.
Right. Okay.
So that we are doing research to see what works and what doesn't work, and then actually how people perceive themselves around science. This is research that has not been done in the United States. So the White Mountains is part of, there's 4 regions in Arizona. White Mountains is part of that. And then the research that we're doing helps to inform what other regions around the country, other rural regions around the country, might be able to do. This is not a program. So National Science Foundation typically funds a laboratory.
Right.
You buy stuff to count cells, right? What we're studying is how people make things happen around STEM. So the problem is there's not enough STEM awareness.
Right.
How do you come together? How do you fix it locally with making local decisions and empowering yourself?
So really, it's a social science experiment.
The laboratory is.
It's
here
us.
Here we are.
Here we are.
That's right.
Yeah.
Here we are.
We're all the rats.
That's right.
But we'll be
mad
known as
scientist right there.
we'll be known as the first. So we set the baseline,
Right.
and it's all about, this is a really innovative area. There's been some really interesting things going on. Bring those people together a little bit more.
So, this isn't for the kids. We're actually talking for older ages here. And we're moving past high school and past college, and we're actually talking about adults. And, you already know this if you're an adult. You never get yourself out of trouble by not thinking about it.
That's right.
Okay? It never happens that way. You already know this as an adult, so now you'll at least understand why it's important to continue to engage, because the only way you continue to grow and the way you keep yourself out of trouble, because once you learn something, you know it, you're sort of like in that autonomous mode where you just do it, chunk.
Yep.
Well, to continue engaging our front lobes, we've got to actually think about new things. So that's why you might like puzzles, you might like Sudoku, or you might like the Candy Crush thing, because even though you're playing Candy Crush and you think it's just a mindless game, you're doing math.
Yep, you are.
You're doing math.
Predicting. Yep.
Whoops.
You're using geometry. Sorry. But...
So these are good things, and it benefits any age group.
Right.
it benefits anybody at any level of where they're at within work or whatever. So it's kind of exciting that it's moved past. It's not just about just teaching the kids at school.
That's right.
Right. So STEM is out. STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math. Really, one perception is, well, that's what the schools deal with.
Right.
But the reality is that that's what life is.
Right.
And it's an underlying aspect to everything we do. If we relegate it only to one part of our life, and a very small part of our life, really, then we lose out on the potential for our own personal growth.
Cool.
Too. So I think that's a big piece. And there's folks that want to do it, want to do stuff together. We have the Fab Lab that University of Arizona has put in at Blue Ridge. That's kind of a cool experiment, and anybody can use it.
Yep.
Anybody. After 3:00 in the afternoon when the school's out, it's open.
There you go.
So the libraries, all the libraries are really becoming an interesting place for informal learning. So it's not just a place to get books.
And it's funny, they've had to morph from that in the digital age. They've had to morph out of that whole the reading, even though it's still a lot of people still pick up the books and read, which is awesome.
Right.
But they've really gone beyond that now,
Right?
And are really bringing the world to the library, so to
Right,
speak.
and really changing the way the libraries are intentionally positioning themselves in the community. It's not a place to come and be silent. It's a place to come and engage with information and learn about things. And learning is noisy. Learning is messy. Learning takes space and materials, not just quiet reading in a corner.
You'll find over the next year, in 2019, the summer reading programs, libraries nationwide.
Right.
The topic is chosen about 5 years out. There's like a 5-year period. But this year is all about space.
Nice.
Yep.
So you'll see in almost all the libraries in the region something to do with space science, which is cool because this is a 50th year of NASA. So there's that involved. The Sholo Library has a grant from NASA. And we're also connecting several of the libraries with a group out of DC that doesn't normally work in the United States. It's a government-funded program that helps support diplomacy in third world countries. And they work through libraries and infrastructure and governments and things like that. So they wanted to try working in the United States. And they have a big staff that deals with libraries and library development. And so I was able to connect with them. And we're using a few of the libraries here in Arizona as a pilot.
Very cool.
That's cool.
To try and get that.
Cool.
So...
Okay, so those of you that are watching or listening, doesn't matter where you're at, I'm going to challenge you here. There's always that aha moment. You're like, oh, wow, I actually just use science. I use technology. I use engineering, or I use math, or I use the arts. They're in there too.
They're in there too.
So what I want you to do is comment and let us know what it is for you that makes you engage your brain and get out of a funk or start, thinking your way out of problems. Let us know that. Anything else you want to let us know this time around, and what can we look forward in the future?
Well, one of the projects that Cal acknowledged Mike Eilertson and his science after-school science club at Sholo Junior High, but they're really doing some incredible stuff. The last time the RAIN group met, we met in his classroom and were able to see some video clips he took of their most recent project, solving a real-world project. He took a team of his junior high students to the senior center in Snowflake.
Wow. And
videotaped conversations with residents and with the dietary staff to find out from residents what is a problem that you're having, what is a challenge that you're having doing activities of daily living. And it ended up being that residents kept dropping their utensils when they were eating, and so kitchen staff were always trying to find utensils with bigger grips or bigger handles, and utensils were falling on the floors, and it was really frustrating. And so ultimately the kids created a handheld utensil that would fit over the hand and had a strap over the handle so that the resident could hold it over their hand and not rely on their grip to be able to eat.
Awesome.
And then built it and created it and donated those back to the senior center. So this is an example of in the moment right here, kids identifying a problem, creating a solution to solve it, and then implementing it.
And looking for the problem.
Right.
That's the key
Right.
too.
Seeking it out.
Seeking
Seeking
it out
it out.
because problems exist and
Right.
we all can identify the
Right.
problems. The question is seeking them and then taking it to the next step.
And not just solving a problem that didn't exist. That's
Right.
Right.
And finding a real one. Right.
I find we got enough
Right.
real ones that we can
Right.
solve.
Right.
Right.
So
And
Awesome.
so that's an example of there's some really cool, innovative stuff the kids are coming up with and solving.
and we can translate that to community. So that's one of the one of our long-term goals is to figure out how to take that that perception, that process of looking around our community, identifying the goals or identifying the problems, and then seeing how do we fix them ourselves.
Right.
Not relying on outsiders to fix them for us, but come together as a community and trying to fix some of those things.
Right.
Very cool.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, thank
Thanks,
you for
man.
your
Cool.
time today.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you guys again
Cool.
here. And we'll be delving into solving problems and getting ourselves engaged.
That's right.
Thanks for having us. We
Thanks, Rob.
appreciate it.
Hey, that's going to be it for this episode of Birdman on the Mountain, the Community Shout. I want to remind you, hey, things are happening all over the mountain. You can check out Mountain Talk. It's out on Mondays, lets you know what's happening. Just a short little rundown. That's on the Facebook page as well. Sunrise is kicking it. They've got all kinds of snow this year. Yay, good stuff. So, but all kinds of, you check out the restaurant video too. Go out, have some fun, and I'll see you around town. If I don't, I'll catch you right here on the web.